Good evening and welcome to Alanson YM Online. I'm Pastor John, and tonight we're going to start off with a game called Tongue Jammer. In this game, I will be wearing a speech jammer. If you don't know what that is, a speech jammer records a person's voice and then plays it back with a slight time delay in their ears. I'm talking milliseconds. And here's what that sounds like.
Peter.
Yeah, it's annoying and it's also really hard to concentrate. Now, while I'm wearing the speech jammer, I'm going to try and give a perfect read through of 5 tongue twisters as fast as I can. Which tongue twisters? I'm glad you asked. We have Peter Piper, we have Woodchuck, She Sells Seashells, I Thought, and Betty Botter. Now let's get this game started. Let's get the speech jammer on. Alright guys, here it goes. I'm going to start jamming my speech now. And I'm going. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? Yes, got it. Next one. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? He would chuck he would as much as he could and chuck as much wood as a woodchuck. Oh man. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could? How much wood could a woodchuck? How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? He would chuck he would as much as he could and chuck as much wood as woodchuck would if a woodchuck could chuck wood. All right. She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells. She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she's... I keep tripping up. She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure. And if she sells seashells on the seashore, then I'm sure she sells seashells... She sells seashells on the seashore. She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure. And if she sells seashells on the seashore, then I'm sure she sells seashore shells. Got it, 2 more to go. I thought a thought, but the thought I thought wasn't the thought I thought I thought. If the thought I thought had been the thought I thought, I wouldn't have thought I thought. 1 more. This is a hard one. Betty Botter bought some butter, but the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my better batter better. So she bought some butter better than the bitter. Betty Botter bought some butter, but the butter's bitter. If I put in my batter... Oh, man. Betty Botter bought some butter, but the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my bitter batter better. So she bought some butter... Betty Botter bought some butter, but the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter... I had it right that time and I stopped. I hesitated. Betty Botter bought some butter, but... Betty Botter bought some butter, but the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my bitter batter better. So she bought some better butter, better than the bitter batter. Butter. Betty Botter bought some butter, but the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my bitter batter better. So she bought some better butter, better than the bitter butter, put it in her bitter batter, made her bitter batter better. Done. All right, guys, that was 3 minutes and about 40 seconds. Give it a try. Download the Speech Jammer app, put some headphones in, and read some tongue twisters. Now let's go ahead and take a look at today's message. I don't know how many of you know this, but I actually sang in choir all the way from elementary school until high school. To be honest, I wouldn't have ever chosen that for myself. But the way my school worked is if you didn't play an instrument for band or orchestra, then you'd end up in choir. For students in 10th grade, you were even allowed to join chamber choir. This was the top of the top choir at the school. It even met before and during school to give people more time to practice reading music and perfecting their songs. Well, I was invited to join chamber choir in 10th grade, and again, I didn't think I was very good. This was just my default since I didn't play an instrument. So I was a little surprised by the invite. Before our first practice, I was thinking, wow, only the best of the best high schoolers are invited to this group. And I was a little confused about why I was there, but not about to question it. The first practice, I realized that this whole time, I had always just floated by and stayed under the radar. And so I didn't really know if I was good or not. I also realized that a lot of being good enough had to do with how much you work to put into practice. The whole thing seemed surreal. We went on to win state one year and came like second or third in the nation. The whole time I just kept wondering, this is so cool, how did I end up here? I thought to myself all the time, am I really supposed to be here? I'm sure someone better than me deserves this spot. I didn't have that level of talent. I never sang solos, but I showed up because I was invited and it was awesome. I think all of us have been there at one point or another, where we get surprised by an invitation. You made the team when you didn't expect to, or you got into a class filled with smarter people, or you feel like you're in a friend group with people way cooler than you. If you've ever felt that, "Are you kidding me?" or "How did I get here?" feeling, you have a lot in common with some people at the very first Christmas. But to talk about that, let me take you back, like way back. For thousands of years, Israel was waiting for their Messiah, the promised one who would come and change everything. As the anticipation built, everybody had ideas about how it would all go down and who would get to hang out with him and what kind of people would have access to him. But everything about how Jesus arrived to Israel was surprising. They thought that the type of people who would be in the know would be people like the religious leaders and kings, but instead it was, well, let me give you a quick look. The Bible says, "And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, 'Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people.'" Next week, we're going to jump all the way into this story, but for tonight, I want you to know one thing. The first people invited were shepherds. Now, most of us don't live around a lot of sheep or shepherds, but back then, shepherds weren't the most popular, the richest, the powerful, or the most religious people. And that's what made it so interesting that an angel, and yes, I get that can be a little super weird, but an angel shows up and announces to them the news of the Messiah and invites them to go see the Messiah for the first time. I have no way of knowing for sure why God chose to let them know first, but I do know he does everything on purpose, and I can't help but imagine he was making a point about what kind of people were invited. Not just rich, not just powerful, not just popular, not just athletic, not just academic, but shepherds too, and eventually everybody else. All that matters was that they were invited. So why do we care? Why should you care? Here's why, because you're invited too. I don't know what your experience with church has been like before you came. It might have been amazing, or you could have had some bad ones. You may have felt excited. I want to let you know that no matter what you felt when you came into church, as you're watching this video, I want you to know this. You are invited. You belong here. Well, thank you for tuning in tonight. Come back next week. I'm actually going to try and give the message while eating some very spicy hot wings. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next week.